I call this meeting of the Public Works Board to order. As is typical during the April meeting annually, the board is to elect a president and vice president. I know that this is the June meeting.
Move your microphone towards yourself, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'd start over.
Okay. We'll start over then, Dave. I hope we're not live.
We're not live
Maybe you have
anymore.
to point
We
it-
don't do live.
That's so smart.
Dan, you may need to point it towards you rather than sideways to it. Now you,
Okay, go.
Thank you. I call the June 11th meeting of the Public Works Board to order. At the previous meeting, the Public Works Board tabled the election of president and vice president, so we'll undertake that today as we do have a quorum president. I will open the meeting and ask for nominations for president of the Board of Public Works.
I think we do roll call first.
Oh. Roll call, please.
Ms. Schmidt? Here. Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mr. Pickard?
here,
Mr. Lair?
Here.
As I was saying, do we have any nominations for president of the Board of Public Works?
I'd like to nominate Todd Temperley as president.
Are there any other nominations? Do I have any other nominations? Any other nominations? We closed the nomination portion of the meeting, and I'd like to put Todd Temperley forward for vote on the president of the Public Works Board.
Who do we do now?
Vote.
I need a motion and second.
Do we make the
Motion
motion?
and a second for Todd to be president of the Public Works Board.
I so move.
I second.
Thank you for your help.
Now we need a vote.
One moment. Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Lair?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
And I hand the gavel off to you, sir.
And move over.
Public speaking is my worst skill. Item 4, I'll entertain nominations for the vice president position.
I'd like to nominate Mark Picard.
Any other nominations? All right, I'll close nominations and I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to motion that we do voting for vice president
Yeah, Mark Picard.
for Mark Picard.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second, so could you take the roll call, Misty?
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Lair?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Item 5, correction and/or approval of the minutes of May 14th, 2019. I was not here for that, so whoever was there, I entertain a motion to approve or modify the minutes.
I move approval of the minutes from the May meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Voice vote, I guess?
We can do roll call.
Okay, roll call, okay.
Mr. Lair?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye, oh, I can't abstain, I'm sorry.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0.
Item 6, questions and public comment. I'm not seeing anybody here. Item 7, discussion, recommendation, and our wastewater treatment plan, compliance, maintenance, annual report.
Okay, as you can see, Bill Kiesling is here. Bill is the director or the foreman of the wastewater treatment plant, and this is an annual endeavor for you to review and approve, or I think move this on for recommendation for approval. And so, Bill, why don't you take it away?
All right. Every year, I guess I come before you, as Paul said, and we go through the Compliance Maintenance Annual Report, or CMAR. Wisconsin Admin Code NR 208 requires this report annually on or before June 30th, And this report is intended to be objective way for the DNR as well as the city to analyze the previous year's operations of the wastewater utility. This year, the report is 29 pages long, I guess as it was last year. It's broken into 10 sections, as it always is. Influent flow and loading is the first section. The second is effluent quality plant performance as it relates to BOD, or biochemical oxygen demand. Effluent quality plant performance total suspended solids, effluent quality plant performance ammonia, effluent quality plant performance for phosphorus, biosolids or sludge quality and management, operator certification and education, financial management, and the sanitary sewer collection system. I guess I'll go through each section. The report is good this year. We've got a 4.0, it's all A's, but there are some things to talk about, I guess, so I'll go through each section and try to point out something that I saw. I guess in section 1, influent flow and loading, the average daily flow was up a bit in 2017, particularly in the second half of the year. I think this is likely due to the fact that we were about 13 inches or better above normal precipitation in 2018 over 2017, excuse me. I guess that's why it's important to concentrate on the I&I removal in the collection system whenever we can, getting the clean water out so we don't have to pay to treat it. We also experienced some higher than normal, for us anyway, BOD loadings, and we did exceed 100% of our design loading in December of 2018. I guess there's not a lot we can do about what's coming in other than work with industry to try to limit it, because that's my guess where it's coming from, but we're continuing to do that. So section 2, effluent BOD, no major problems here, but again, it's dependent on the industries. Section 3, effluent TSS and plant performance. Again, there's no exceedances that counted against us. We did, however, exceed a weekly average TSS pounds per day limit in September, possibly due to the heavy rains. You get silt and things washing in, the retention time in the treatment plant's down because of heavy flow, so you've got more solids going out. Section 4, ammonia, we had no problems here with effluent ammonia, which is good because the nitrophine bacteria are kind of a indicator organism. If you remember in 2014 when we were really experiencing some problems with our wastewater operations, we were losing our nitrophine bacteria sometimes, so it's good if we're not having any problems there. Section 5, effluent phosphorus, no problems again, same as last year, and I guess part of the reason for that is a broad limit. The limit is 1. It's going to be 0.1 by 10/31/2025, so there will be some changes coming, but it's an A at this point, and we have no problems. Section 6, biosolids management, well, the grade's good. It's a little misleading for what it felt like for us, I guess. We generated about 700,000 gallons of sludge. We had a wet spring, we had a wet fall, the farmer couldn't get out in the fields, he wouldn't let us out there. We couldn't get the sludge hauler there. We didn't get empty. We went into winter with probably 400,000 or 500,000 gallons of sludge from the previous year, and our tanks are really full right now. So we're going to continue to work on finding more usable land that we can maybe apply on some ground in the middle of summer where there's less stress and less dependent on the good spring or the good fall conditions. So we just started hauling today, as a matter of fact, and this is really late for us. Section 7, staffing and preventive maintenance. This section, every year, asks me the question, was your wastewater plant adequately staffed last year? And every year I struggle with this a bit more. We lost another experienced operator in 2018. He was off part of the year for other reasons, and that left us a little bit scrambling during the year. We've got some new people. We've got good people there, but they're less experienced, and it requires a little more supervision and that kind of thing. So we're moving forward there. I think there's actually an operator shortage in wastewater, and I think a lot of communities are having the same issues, finding enough people to fill the skilled positions. Section 8, operator certification. I currently hold all the licenses, and I have staff members with some or most as well, so Lake Mills is in pretty good shape. Section 9, financial management. Betsy completes this section, and I kind of look it over every year for what I know. I mean, she's got plenty of money in there for the replacement fund and stuff. It looks like she does a good job, so I didn't see anything there to be concerned with unless you guys are seeing something I don't. Section 10, sanitary sewer collection system. This addresses our sewer backups, our spills, the maintenance of the collection system. And as I told you last year, the DNR is emphasizing the CMOM, or Capacity Management Operation and Maintenance Program. It's an acronym for, basically they have me set goals. They want us to set goals and try to achieve them and maintain our collection system. And there's some other things involved, but we review the progress of these goals annually, and we met almost all the goals that you'll see on page 23. We exceeded our sewer cleaning goal. We met our root removal, sewer televising, manhole inspection, manhole rehab goals. We did not meet our lift station O&M goal, possibly, due to some staffing changes or some shorthandedness there, but let me see, the other goal we didn't meet was our main line rehab goal. I'm not too concerned about that. We figured we were gonna be doing Main Street. Never happened. So I think we're gonna smash it this year between Main and Mulberry, so I'm not really very worried about that. I'll continue to monitor that, and we'll see where that goes. We also had, I guess not a lot more than average, but we had 3 sewer backups last year that I can directly attribute to inflow from building drains, buildings in low places coming into the sewer can't take the extra capacity and backed up their neighbors. So I imagine we'll have more of that, despite our best efforts with the I&I reduction. I think when you have sump pumps in wet areas, you have houses with discharge pumps in their basement, they can pressurize a gravity main in a hurry where it can't keep up. If you have a low area, I'm probably talking about the Grant Street Basin, behind the Arlac.
So would you contribute the 3 backups directly to I&I due to?
There's one house on that street that has a discharge pump that pressurized the main and pushed it into their neighbors' houses. It's not their fault, but it's just kind of how it is. So I imagine we'll have more of those things if we continue to get these kind of 100-year rains every year. In general, it's a very good report. The overall condition of the plant is good. We'll likely, I guess, as you know, have some expenditures coming up, with the collection system, the pump stations. All those things always need upgrading as time goes on. We've got phosphorus compliance and plant capacity upgrades will, I'm sure, at some point be forthcoming here. The timing will be determined by several factors. I guess for phosphorus, it's going to be dictated by the compliance schedule outlined in our permit. So we're working with our engineer and coming up with a plan so that we can meet the permit requirements, but that'll be forthcoming. As far as the other things go, I guess it's not as definite. They'll be dictated by the types of businesses that come to town, what kind of loadings they give us, if they're high BOD or high organic matter coming in, sugars, alcohols, things like that are higher, greases, the growth of the service area and the plant's ability to keep meeting the permit, I guess. But we still have a few operational problems. I've still got some of the foaming. I've still got sludge tanks that foam up occasionally randomly that shouldn't. They start digesting. That's something they shouldn't be doing. We're still working with the industries and trying to stay on top of it. And basically, I mean, we have a treatment plant that's about 9 years past its 20-year design life. We're still getting 4.0s with it. We're meeting our limits. I mean, things are pretty good. I guess if we're getting all A's, it's hard to complain about it. With that, I guess that kind of concludes what I had, unless you have some questions for me. I'll try to answer them.
In one of the sections, it talks about an energy efficiency study. We did one 11 years ago.
It's pretty long ago, yeah.
Does the state pay for them? I'm just making sure that we don't put time and effort towards something that is going to cost money for them to do the energy efficiency study.
I do not know if the
Okay.
state pays for that.
Well, and we actually have people on staff that can do that,
Okay.
yeah, or work with WPPI to have it done. So, yeah, if there is a cost, it's going to be quite minimal.
Okay. Just looking out there, because at least I've worked with Joe in the past for energy efficiency studies, so it's nice to at least see a familiar name, but also it'd be prudent for us to look at it at least on a routine basis. If it's not happening now, then at least think about when we want to do it next. Just an opportunity.
I know we made a few of the changes he recommended way back then. I mean, that was so long ago. I kind of found that last year. Betsy was asking me about it, and I dug through some archives and didn't realize, I guess I had forgotten it had even been done. It was so long ago.
To your point, I'm not expecting to have any earth-shattering things happen out of it. It's just kind of a routine thing to do. It's just like cleaning out the pipes. We do it just to stay on top of new technology and
And while you're replacing equipment or looking at those things, you look to find equipment that meets the recommendations in the study so that you're getting efficient things, yes.
He mentioned that the plant is quite old, but actually a couple of years ago, we invested almost $2 million in redoing the plant. And the plant does have expansion room, and we have looked at other options, and we have lined up other options for continuing to expand the plant. So, we can continue to get high grades there from a plant standpoint.
This report used to have a line item, if I recall, that said, how old is your plant? Subtract so many points for your age of your plant if it's getting old. And they must have removed that.
Well, I think I wasn't pointing it out necessarily as such a negative thing, but I would be
Yeah, yeah.
remiss if I just come in here and paint you a 4.0 picture every year, and then all of a sudden, one year we come in and say, well, it's time to add on, and you're gonna say, what happened? We
Yeah.
had a great plant 3 years ago, why are we adding on?
Sure.
So as Steve said, there's room to increase our capacity by half again as much probably, right on the site where we're at with the technology we currently have, without doing a
We have
lot.
made arrangements to be able to expand more than that.
Yes.
Probably the biggest reason for expansion you discussed was changing phosphorus limits and maybe nitrogen limits, and those will probably impact us more than anything else.
I don't think that'll gobble up a lot of real estate, though. I think that'll all kind of fit.
But it'll be a cost.
It'll be a cost, yes.
It'll change our plan, and then we'll probably have to make other modifications to the overall plan. So I don't see the plant needing to be totally redone, but we'll continue to have to come through every once in a while, make $1.5 million, $2 million, maybe $3 million worth of improvements, depending on what permit limits are and what the flows are. Now, and we can talk about this later, but tomorrow we're gonna discuss having them add sump pump connections to the stormwater system on Mulberry. Because we've noticed a lot of sump pumps on Mulberry and a lot of groundwater. And the anticipation is that there's a lot of sump pumps being pumped into the sanitary sewers. So maybe if we've done that on other streets where we've had that problem, maybe we can continue to do that. Mulberry and Grant and Prairie are flat streets with absolutely no stormwater drainage. So most of those people, they take water, they pump it into the sanitary sewer system. We've gone through, done inspections, they'll remove it, and anticipate that it doesn't take them too long to get it back in.
In a lot of older houses, if you don't have a sump, it'll physically run across the basement floor and go into the floor drain. Where's it gonna go? So the conversation on the age of the treatment plant was more just to point out the fact that it isn't new anymore.
The oxidation ditch type of plant is not the most common type of plant, is it?
It's not conventional activated sludge, I guess you could say. Conventional activated sludge, you have tanks, you have maybe a little bit more flexibility with you can form different zones in those tanks.
Right. I mean, when I drive around, I see mostly ponds. You know, most treatment plants have,
Well, a pond or a lagoon is like a really small community usually builds because they're very cost effective and there's not a lot of moving parts.
Right.
They're easy to run. I guess this plant is a similar process to that, but I would say a far superior process, especially for removing ammonia and things like that. It's a pretty good design.
There are plants that have ponds that aren't necessarily the primary treatment either. They could be using it as storage for sludge or infiltration. You know, I've seen a lot of them where if they start taking really high flows, they'll divert to a pond and then they'll pump them back through. And I've seen a lot of places have ponds where they store sludge. We have tanks, but a lot of places will have a pond. And so when you look at it, you can't naturally assume that pond is the treatment system. There are some, but generally ponds for treatment systems are really small communities because it's a slow, long process of aeration and it doesn't do the type of treatment that you'd expect to see in a city our size.
Everything settles into the pond too, so when you have to take the pond down and clean it, that's much more problematic. I would say our treatment plant's a very good design and it's working well and the proof is in the report.
In looking at I&I, how do we compare to other treatment facilities in the county? I'm thinking more along the lines of, like, in the later months of last year, we had higher flow coming in through extra rainfall and precipitation.
I mean, I guess I haven't done a study where I've
Yeah.
have hard numbers. You talk to other wastewater operators and honestly, I think we're
About right.
doing pretty well here. I really do.
Yeah.
I tend to think maybe a lot of ours is coming in from sump pump connections and things like that, as Steve said. I think the city's spent a good amount of time and money trying to seal up older pipes and find the leaks, and whenever we find manholes that are leaking or squirting, we fix them and seal them, but, some of it can be cost prohibitive too. You try to get the low-hanging fruit and fix those things first, and
We did an I&I study in 2004. Vicki? 2004, 2003?
Sounds about right.
And, of course, the inflows, like Bill said, we made a really strong effort to control. So we've done a lot of work there.
I remember some issues with trailer parks, if I recall.
Yes, trailer park is still an issue, but we did a lot of work down around Sandy Beach.
Right.
We did Prairie Street, the line running from the wastewater treatment plant up CP and Olin and then out Prairie to tie in out there by the Cherokee Path. We did a substantial amount of work on that one that sealed up a lot of flow. We've done, and we did out County Highway V. We've identified those areas and done a lot of work to fix that. That's stuff that we can control. We did go through a pretty extensive sump pump inspection program, but just about the time that we started to kick that in, dried up and got really dry. And so we kind of pushed it off and we just have never gotten back into the flow. I mean, probably 2008 was the last time I really would have been valuable. Other than that, there was several years until about 2014 it was really dry, and then all of a sudden it started raining again. So from 15 on, we've had a lot of rain, but not enough. It hasn't pushed us like it did in the early 2000s when we were worried about our capacity.
if you look at the first page of the report, near the very top of the page, you'll see you'll have influent monthly average flow in million gallons a day. And when you look down there, you follow that down, you can see when the flow numbers go up, the BOD concentration to the right of it oftentimes goes down. That's a pretty clear indicator of clear water coming in, because you're getting about the same pounds per day if you look to the far column to the right. you're just getting a lot more flow with it. You're treating a lot more water, you're pumping a lot more water.
To your point, looking at December, was,
Well, if you look at December, the flow is up about, the daily average is up about 200,000 gallons a day from December of 2017, the previous year, because I looked at it.
Okay.
And the BOD is also up about 40 milligrams per liter. So if you do the math on the flow in millions of gallons times the BOD times the 8.34, you're going to get that 2,008 pounds a day that's in the right-hand column. But if you, normally, I guess, you know, it would be considerably less than our design of, 1856. So it's just a matter of the BOD being so high. Somebody's probably giving us some kind of a sugar or a grease, or there's too much food coming in.
do we have that issue normally? Is it normally during like a December cleanup per se?
Well, I'm wondering, yeah, and I looked at that too, and in the previous year, it went up a little, not as much. But, you get towards the end of the year, I'm wondering if maybe some industries aren't cleaning house, or people aren't, production's not increased, or,
Okay.
Any other questions? We have a prepared motion. Put it up here.
Motion to approve motion 19-6-1, authorizing the city manager and staff to submit the report to the city council for final resolution.
I'll second that.
You have a motion and a second. Take the vote, please, Misty.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Lair?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Item 8, update on yard waste costs and enforcement. This is from how many years we talked about this? A year? The existing yard waste, we knew there were issues, and the site that we're currently hauling to is going to fill up. So we discussed doing things differently until we decide on a new site. And the staff has been requested to provide some updates as well as tracking the expenses involved. So I'll let you take over, Paul.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, there's two parts to this, actually. One is just the update on the yard waste, time, money, materials, that sort of thing. And then Mark had requested some discussion about the enforcement there. So I'll handle the update information, and we can move into the other one. But the memo, and this, Dwayne actually put this together, this is the first year we've actually tracked what we're hauling out of the yard waste center. And so that second page of the memo is something new, something we haven't done before. So it's really only about a half a year worth of data. But we are now kind of starting to tie it back to some of the other information we have been tracking for quite some time. And if you look at the memo that Dwayne put together, that first graph, if you will, or table, is something that actually Misty puts together every year. And so it's information that we have on a regular basis, and we were able to go back and do some comparisons. I'll just, make sure I put this out, that these comparisons are valuable, but, there's so many variables, things that have changed, that sort of thing, the way we track stuff has changed. But I mean, it's still good information, and it's something we'll continue to do. And so if you look at 2019, as noted, there's only about 151 days worth of data there. And if we expand those numbers out, they're going to come probably in some cases much higher than what we've seen in the past, like the yard waste. If that continues at the pace that we've seen so far, we will be at about 815 hours of moving yard waste and that sort of thing. Brush pickup, that's going to fluctuate dramatically every year, but we'll be up in about the 500 range there. Leaf pickup is another one that fluctuates pretty dramatically, but we should be over 200 hours involved in that. So at the end of the year, we'll see. That's why I want to be just a little bit careful. But again, now we're tying this back to what we do at the yard waste center. And based on the chart that we've got from the first half of the year, we're hauling a couple of loads per day, every day, which obviously isn't what we do. We kind of let it stack up a bit, but, you know, that's probably a little more than we really thought. So we've seen some surprises, but again, the data is early. The other thing that we did at the bottom of the page then is put some costs to this. And again, there's some assumptions, and rather than go back every year and identify exactly what the wage was, we kind of took an average of what the wage would be for those various years. And so that gives you a pretty good snapshot of what we're actually spending on those various topics, yard waste, brush pickup, et cetera. And so decisions will have to be made. You know, can we continue doing this? Are these costs that we want to continue to make as a free service, if you will? And really, that's, you know, what the data is intended for, to see if we're going in the right direction. So I hadn't intended to make a lot of comments on this, but certainly be willing to answer any questions or get any input you have as thoughts as how all this is fitting together. So I'll leave it there and answer questions.
The spreadsheet shows a lot of hauling in January and then none in February. Do you know what the January hauling is all about?
No, and when we looked at this, actually Dave and Dwayne and I wondered that same thing. Part of it might be that we weren't recording properly. You know, this was new in January, and so, you know, we were kind of wondering if maybe some of the stuff that we did in January actually ended up toward the end of the month or early in February, but it just ended up being tracked. In other words, when they do their sheets, they have to put a date at the top, and we're wondering if maybe they just put the wrong date, so we got it in the wrong month. But it is curious that we have that much in January, because you would think that would be, you know, an off month.
No. Christmas trees.
Yeah, that would be the bulk of it, but even some of that we take right out to the conservation center. So, yeah, it's,
Plus, we had fairly decent weather in January, but February was from another part of, you
Yeah.
know, below this earthly realm. It was terrible.
yeah. And thank you for reminding me, weather is something else we might start incorporating in this. You know, what was the weather like, and will that affect how we do things? But point well taken.
Note that you check how many windstorms we had above the 40 mile an hour, you'll find that the brush pickup times will be significantly attached to that, because if I remember correctly, that one year we had like 4 of them, and it looks like that's the year that you have a lot of hours tied to brush pickup.
Yeah, so we have, yeah, you're right. So we have to correlate all that and figure it out. But even still, over several years, that's going to average out a bit, I think.
Yes. It's just you look at the spike here and wonder what happened.
Yeah.
Weather definitely played a part.
So we'll continue doing this, you know, continue getting our data, adding to what we have to collect to see if we can figure out exactly what's going on. And when it comes time to really make some decisions, we should hopefully have some useful information.
I think the one thing you're going to find is that we pay more attention to making sure the timesheets are filled out appropriately. I think a lot of years, a lot of the time went to the default category, and didn't get assigned properly. And so you're going to find that we spend a lot more hours there from now on than we had historically, just because they're paying attention to that time they spend there more accurately.
I agree. And they are paying more attention.
With paying more attention, have you noticed any like side effects in a good way? Like, we're noticing things and why they're happening and we're staying ahead of them more, or is it still just status quo? You know what I mean? Like, we're paying more attention, are we noticing any changes just because of that, or still pretty normal?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
that Dave pays a lot of attention to it. I think the attention is to the timesheet.
Okay.
If you haven't recorded, like now they're recording loads, so they're thinking, okay, yeah, I was there this time, this time, this time. They used to come in and go, oh, I spent 8 hours doing street work, and actually they had spent about 4 hours doing yard waste and 4 hours doing street work. Or they came in and they couldn't remember, so they just left it in the default category, which goes to building maintenance. You know, So it's, those are the kinds of things where if they remember better because they were recording the time, we get more accurate data on some of the things like loads and hours.
Yeah. I think just anecdotally, a couple of guys have mentioned they didn't realize how many loads and how much time we were actually spending on it. So I think the numbers we're starting to develop now are more realistic.
Okay.
We had the same thing occur with tree plants. When Rob actually made them start recording how many trees they planted, where, and how many hours they put in, they were shot, and how much time. And I think the more time these guys pay attention to the actual time and the data, they're gonna be surprised, but it'll be more accurate.
Are they also using smartphones more often for recording the data than they used to?
You know,
We're using good old pen and paper. Each truck has got a form in it, and the guys turn it in on a regular basis.
Who gets to type them in, though? Eventually they get typed in, right?
Well, I think you're aware that we've got an Excel guru here who just
Okay.
loves to do that.
She loves to do that.
So he,
Dwayne.
yeah.
Wayne, all right.
So, and quite honestly, Vicky, we find that actually quicker than if they've got to mess around with their phone, they can just write it down and go. Yeah. Remember, these are of the generation where smartphones aren't really what they're used to, so.
Oh,
And he's making reference to historically, because we're getting a lot younger.
We are.
Not
Well,
we,
not
not we
us.
ourselves, but
Our workforce
Yeah.
is getting much younger.
You're getting old.
I am old. How can I get old? I am old.
Without getting
Good
into,
topic.
without getting into the other details necessarily, is there still discussion on the composting site and how that would be looked at?
I would say that's really what we're trying to build here is information
All
for how big a site we need, what we actually need there. If you recall from our discussions, that was really the hook, you know, what is it that we want to do? How big does the site have to be? And so this, I hope, is starting to push us toward what we have to do.
It actually gives us a much broader perspective on that, because let's say we decide to cooperate with another community or a group of communities, where we haul, how many loads we haul, how much additional time it's gonna take, what condition we decide to haul it in, those all start to become important features of it. You know, if we haul the Watertown, they're gonna want us to have a certain type of thing. If we haul the Jefferson, they're gonna want us to have it in a different. If we all join together and form one site somewhere, changes the whole overall perspective. If we decide to do our own, it changes the whole perspective again, but at least you have enough data to start making those decisions, right?
I'd like to, and I've expressed this, is it good data? Because if you change the way the site is run, if you restrict the hours or the contractors, then the quantities change. So is it good data?
Hey, you know, Mark, and we've discussed that, but historically, you shut the gates, and it ends up at the outside edge of the gate.
Not if you have security cameras and you enforce it.
I'm gonna say that that's not always the case. It didn't happen in Watertown. And when you're debating enforcement of a composting site, who's enforcing it? I'm not. Paul doesn't. Who enforces it, Vicki?
and as the site is outside the city limits, that gets even dicier.
But let's say the one where we're at right now, who enforces that? We have signs up that say you can't haul there.
Even if you get pictures or license plates?
Well, can we get pictures of license plates?
If,
Someone has to go out and enforce it. Someone has to write the letter that says, this is what's going to happen.
I do not think that the defeatist attitude is a good attitude. I don't think the attitude of, there's nobody assigned to do this, therefore it can't be done. You know, no, who's going to do that? Well, nobody's doing that right now. It's not assigned to any specific person, but it could be assigned to a person or a department. It's not like it can't be done, it's just that it is not being done.
look at the city overall and their enforcement. The only place that I know that there's any significant enforcement is in the police department.
Right.
That's it. If you told me that, if someone called and said, hey, someone's grass is tall, Rob sends a letter. But that's it. If there are signs on Main Street that violate the zoning code, who's enforcing? That's a debate I would love to have all the time. Who's enforcing what?
You're saying we have to make it a criminal offense?
No, you need
So the police,
someone
for
to
the police,
enforce it.
yeah, I know, but, I mean, I think the police only do things to enforce things that are considered criminal, I mean,
They do other things.
Yeah.
They're authorized to enforce some of our zoning codes. I know that they hate doing it.
yeah.
They are going to push it off to the absolute bottom of the barrel. They will do every other thing other than that if they can. And our zoning administrator is here 3 hours a day, 2 days a week. He's the one assigned to enforce most of this. As far as enforcing what's going on in the yard waste side, I don't even, it says that it can't do it. But who's assigned to enforce it?
So I guess I have two quick questions. Without answering the first one, I'm gonna go right to both of them. One is this an opportunity for us as a community? And the other part is this a discussion that we should be having at Public Works?
It never hurts to have it at a community level.
Okay.
Because debating it and sending up to the council, gives them something to work from. But it's a staff issue. And it also takes, the wherewithal, I should say wherewithal, the fortitude to stand behind the long-term enforcement. Because I'll guarantee you,
Right.
I'm gonna have a 70-year-old lady who comes in here and says, that gentleman is hauling the trees, the brush from my yard that you used to pick up and aren't picking up anymore. And when that happens, we're gonna be back to allowing everybody to dump at the yard waste center. Because we can't determine who is the contractor that's hauling for them and who is not. And, I will bet that we take a lot of town glass and town white mills material. And we could get a camera and start to do enforcement, but all you're gonna do is get a lot of kickback from the other entities. I don't have any problem with that. I just, there's a little bit more that has to go along with me.
It's taking a lot of money to do all this hauling. And it's filling up a site that we won't have a few years from now.
Right. And to a certain extent, the debate is how much longer does that give us?
Well, I don't look at it that way. I'd like to preserve that site for as long as we can by controlling the situation as soon as possible, rather than, oh, the site is full, we'll have to control it now.
I'm looking at it the other way in that we're still gonna take a certain amount of yard waste that's going to go to the conservation center, and the conservation center is gonna be full. Then what do we do at that point? Because it's not gonna matter where we have a composting site or not. I don't think that the site that we're at, it has more issues than just that. There's runoff, there's the size of it, as this community continues to get larger, we're not gonna be allowed to have that there. So you're debating that is, that, I'm not even gonna touch that one. We have a certain amount of space left at the conservation center. Once that's full, no matter what we do anywhere else, we gotta do something. We've gotta figure out where we're going. Are we gonna haul somewhere else? Because I guarantee you, the next haul sites are multiple distances away. And if you think that we're spending a lot now, we're gonna spend a lot more then. And so the debate becomes, where do we cut that off? And let's say we do come up with something. And come up with an agreement that we're gonna share with the town of Lake Mills at the current site. Or the town of Aspen, which we've debated and we've been discussing. It'll fill up a lot faster, once it's fully known that it's an open site, it'll fill up a lot faster than it does now.
I didn't understand your point about why not restrict, control it now versus control it down the road, when we have to do something more. I understand there's issues with the site, but that doesn't prevent us from doing a better job of controlling it than we are right now,
Yeah,
which,
but don't point that at me when you say control it. I don't have any ability to control it.
who's in charge, who's in charge, who does,
I am not. I will tell you that I don't think I have the authority to do that,
okay,
okay?
I guess it's the city council then that we need to make a
City
recommendation.
council doesn't enforce laws.
Yep, well,
Guess that's the city attorney.
Well, that-
Can we say finger pointing?
well, there has to be an ordinance in place to give whoever's,
There's an ordinance in place, it's council. It's, we prosecuted multiple violations in the last year, okay, a handful. Is that representative of how much the activity is occurring? Absolutely not. We continue to remove stuff that's not allowed.
It probably should.
yeah.
but we prosecuted people who hauled in material that we saw that was hazardous material. We haven't prosecuted one yard waste person ever.
One business, and then there was building materials and stuff like that, tires, different shingles, stuff like that.
Yeah. So that, from that standpoint, it's the second, like I said, the second it happens, someone's gonna come in and say, hey, that was my yard waste. I'm a legitimate user of the yard waste center. You either pick it up or allow me to have someone deliver it for me. And that opens a hole in there like you can't believe.
Those,
That's like saying, if we tell somebody that they cannot discharge their sump pump to the sanitary sewer, that opens up a whole can of worms.
And it does.
Yeah.
It does,
I've been down that road, haven't
Yeah.
you, Todd?
Yeah,
yeah.
We were
Well,
at council, and we debated that, and
and what was the decision?
we made ourselves just about virtually impossible to enforce some pump inspection.
I remember drafting quite a substantial ordinance that helps us do it.
I wrote it. But
I think I did.
Well, I put together the.
you modified it to require evidence first or something. I remember that, right? Yeah, I remember you two debating, and,
It used to be
Or-
that, it
yeah.
originally came forward as we could go door to door and do an inspection.
right, but then we had to have evidence that they were doing it,
Contributing.
yeah, or suspicion, we have to have reasonable,
Reasonable suspicion.
so that was kind of,
Yeah, you just can't go into somebody's
how it looks-
basement and take a look. You
Well-
gotta have a reason to believe that they might be.
then how do you have suspicion?
I don't know, but we're
But I
kind
was
of
asked.
veering way off the
Yeah, we are.
topic now.
Yeah,
But, I mean, those are enforcement issues. And
my suggestion is you can just go Google enforcement of yard waste sites to see what other communities have done.
Oh, yeah, that's a popular topic on the,
Oh, you can find anything out there. Find some concrete examples to come back with. I mean,
well, the police officers in the city have written citations.
Yeah.
Those citations have been prosecuted. By and large, those citations were referred to the police officers based on other staff observations. And that's kind of the route it's gone. There aren't cameras set up. There aren't rows of houses that are facing this and watching it. It's a
Right.
bit secluded, although it is across the street from a vibrant business. There's a lot of leeway and there's a lot of kind of room for people to get away with what they're attempting to get away with, if they're attempting to get away with it, or if it's just, an issue of not knowing or not being willing to look into it. It's just a convenient site to get rid of stuff. The stuff magically disappears.
Well, let me give you an example.
Enforcement's very important here. I think that we could, provide a directive to the police officers to expend more time, more effort there, especially during busier times. If they start writing more citations, that may cause, at least a reaction in the populace. That's probably one way to start.
Well, I've referred at least two to Paul, who has referred them to the police department. Recently, I saw somebody, a contractor, that's been working in the city, a local contractor, been working in the city for many years. I say, you're not supposed to put stuff here. I say, what do you mean? I said, read the sign, the new sign that was put up in the last 6 months. Well, we've been putting stuff here for years. It's never been a problem. People, it's, nobody's, I don't know if somebody said they could or just nobody said they couldn't, but that's the attitude. And clearly there's a sign, there used to not be a sign that said a whole lot. So now at least there's something there that's, you can't just say I didn't know. Well, you should have read the sign at least, right? But if we know as a city that people are doing this, and we don't want people to do this, I assume we don't want people to do this, contractors to do this, shouldn't we do something about it?
That's a question, that's a great question. But we have that on every issue in the city.
So
Yeah.
shouldn't,
Well, it's a question of the resources that are available, where police officers spend their time.
Right.
Yeah.
How do we chase down
So-
these
so how about, look on the internet, Lake Mills lawn and garden contractors. Make a list, send a letter to those people saying, this is what the rule is, don't do this. If we see you doing this, you'll get a citation. Yes, it takes some time. It takes somebody to be assigned to do the task, but it takes many, many hours to haul all this stuff away too. If that can reduce the usage, it's a good thing. And yes, it may take some citations. I understand. But isn't that a good thing to do?
Again, I'm going to debate it because I'm going to say someone's going to come in and, I already had a guy, came in and said, someone told my contractor he couldn't haul there anymore. And I said, well, talk to your council member because
Right.
that's the way it is.
Right.
And he was going to talk to his council member about why can't he haul my yard waste to the yard waste.
Well, maybe we should need to get some at least,
Well, I personally wonder why, if I hire a contractor to haul away my brush versus I get a friend to haul away the brush, it's still getting hauled away from my property, it's my brush, I'm a city taxpayer. Why is it because the person who's hauling it as a contractor can't do it, but a friend with a pickup truck can? What's the difference?
how do you enforce
That's what
that?
the ordinance says. And then
Well, if your friend has a license plate that's attached to a city address, he can, but if he's attached to a town address, he can't.
What if I'm in the
if it's a
truck
con-
with my friend and they say, that's my yard waste? What difference does it make who's driving the vehicle?
So if you have a contractor that does work for the city residents and town residents, how do you enforce it?
That's a good question.
That is a good
And that's why I
question.
think it has to be what the sign currently says, which is no contractors. And the contractors, they can find somebody someplace else to haul it if that's an important thing for their residents.
I think that was the original debate too, wasn't it, Mark? Is that when we put this in place, if you hire a contractor, they normally have their own place to go.
It was discussed. I don't know if there was a decision, but there certainly was discussed at this board.
I come to the conclusion that their place to go is the city of Lake Mills Yard Waste.
Well, now, if a tree contractor takes down a tree, they don't haul it to the city yard waste center. So not every contractor does it.
We have had them do it, or at least portions of it.
Mm-hmm.
But
and possibly still
That I
do.
know of do not. But a lot of them are big contractors that have their own.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? This is getting a little
Yeah. I
emotional,
think-
if nothing else. But would it be worth our while to have just a work session on this and maybe have Mick available so we can talk with him about enforcement and what's really
If we
feasible?
need to
what
modify
isn't,
the
and-
ordinances themselves, because
Yeah,
that's
I
the only
wonder-
way we can tell you what to do is through either a written resolution or an ordinance.
But I wonder
Yeah.
if we've got an enforceable, if we need to change it. So, but I'm wondering if that's all we can talk about. Get the players
Or
at the table.
why don't we
and I-
kick it up to the city council level and have the council have a policy discussion about it? Because unless and until the
Right.
city council does something with it for enforcement, doesn't matter how much we talk about it, whether or not we bring in the police chief to talk about it, it doesn't matter at all.
So I think the next step is that the city council should discuss it, and if they want to kick it back down to the Public Works Board, fine, but if they say, we don't want to deal with this, that's fine too. If they want to make a decision on their own, that's fine too. But I think we need to get some buy-in from the city council also, because if we decide something and they don't like it, what's the point?
Well, why don't we, at our next Public Works Board meeting, pass a resolution about what the issue is and send it to the city council for it to take it up?
Why don't, can't you just communicate what's happened here and
Well, we could, but then we have to have it on an agenda. So are you saying I need to put it on the agenda, or should the body pass a resolution that then gets it on the agenda?
They seem to prefer when it comes from the Board of Public Works or Plan Commission. The request,
It's something,
rather
it's something voted on.
It's an
Yeah.
expression of the committee.
That's right.
Yeah. That's why I recommend that we have this on the agenda for next month.
And any member of the Public Works Board can put something on the agenda if you want, if it's related to the Public Works Board, correct?
No,
No?
a city council member can put something on the agenda, but,
On our agenda?
oh, on our agenda, I don't know what goes on our agenda.
Yeah,
Mark asked for this one, we haven't ever really debated.
right.
I mean, if at some point in time we started getting somebody who was really starting to put radical stuff on.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, yard waste is
But generally, we stick to the topics.
Right. I mean, that's the whole reason why people volunteer for boards. They want to have a say and they want to put something on the agenda to just have a yay or no, just to get it off their chest. And
If we're going to put it on the agenda, is there other information you want or need that we should have available then for our discussion, or?
The one thing is, we should have a framework resolution
yeah,
that we can modify, because I'm assuming that there's going to be some discussion as to what we want to convey to the city council that expresses the opinions.
mhm.
Because there is quite a diverse set of issues in this that's they're going to have to resolve. Sometimes I'm curious, certain level of frustration with certain levels of enforcement requirement.
We have the same issue with sidewalk blocking as well. People expect the police to be driving around all the time writing tickets for cars that are blocking sidewalks.
driveways or?
Yeah, the driveway,
driveways.
yes.
Or,
And that was,
setting stuff on the sidewalk and making it less than 5 feet. That's an ADA violation, we could get sued.
Well,
People
let's
do that all the time.
yeah,
stick to yard waste here.
yeah. Well, no, I'm
It's
just,
still, it's really, the
Yeah.
yard waste issue is an enforcement issue.
right. This is where I sympathize with staff. I mean, you can't have police everywhere.
I understand, yeah.
And do you want to add more police officers to step it up?
Or do you want to put more hours on your zoning administrator?
Yeah,
That's a possibility.
right.
Get crucified on not having them here enough to do the erosion control inspections on building sites regularly.
Mhm.
That's another enforcement issue. I mean, there's so many of them that if I started laying them out, we could have people here, we could have multiple people here 24 hours a day. But we're kind of used to not being enforced upon.
Okay, so sounds like we have a plan for a written resolution at the next meeting. Hopefully get some clear guidelines.
Sounds good.
All right. Item 9, update on lead service line loan program. We had a state grant and that ran out, so now we want to decide whether to continue that or how.
Yeah, okay, and I put together probably more information than I had initially intended, but I wanted to give you some background and some update. And so I won't by any means go through the whole thing. But what is included in here, as you can see, is this is one of the reports that we send to the DNR every month about how many inspections we've done, and you can look at that and see that we're darn near close to, being finished. And we've identified a number of lead service laterals and many more than we thought or anticipated we would find. And we've been continuing to work with residents to get rid of these lead laterals, et cetera. One of the things that I want to point out, there's a number of things I want to point out in here. One of them is that as we were doing the inspections, we're going into the homes and we're seeing what the material is at the meter. But then when we excavate for whatever reason, whether it's street construction or something like that, we find that there's a different material at the curb stop or at the valve, which means that somewhere between the meter and the valve, that material changed. And I believe anecdotally, we found 2 or 3 services where it was like lead, copper, lead, or copper, lead, copper, or something like that. So quite an interesting combination. All of this primary or preliminary information is coming down to what's the DNR going to have us do next. Are they going to ask us to remove all 300-plus services? If you're a betting person, you would bet in favor of that. And then it's going to be a case of how do we go about that? How many of them do we have to replace? So that then gets us into the whole funding thing. And as you can see, I think it's on page 3, we got that $300,000 grant program. And it looks like when all is said and done with Mulberry and Main Street, we will have expended very close to the $300,000 grant that we were given. Our goal is to not go over that amount, but we're going to be pretty darn close. If we don't go over it, we do have a waiting list so that we will, get within a few dollars of spending that entire amount. So that's not going to be a problem. The next steps then are what funding is available. Oh, and I want to stop before I get to that point. It's one thing for the customer or for the resident to change out their service, but we have to change out ours. And as you can see in that paragraph just before the future LSL funding, since 2017 when this whole thing started until now, the water utilities expended over $400,000 on this. Unexpected. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of money. And that's, we could get into another lengthy debate about, so how do we recoup that? Who's responsible for it, et cetera, et cetera. But bottom line is that we have expended that much money. So then that takes us to the future funding. And the Public Service Commission has recognized that this is real money and that the utilities are spending real dollars and they have to have the ability to recoup that. Now, there's a debate there. Even though we have the right to recoup that money, do we do that? Do we lay that into the rates and we try to get our money back? In other words, we have everybody pay for replacing lead in just certain parts of town. So go ahead, Mark.
I just want to clarify, when you're talking right now, are you talking about the homeowner's portion, the city's portion, or both?
Well, I'm talking both. Thank you. The grant money would allow us to help the homeowner replace their portion. But under the PSC rules, that means that everyone that has one has to replace it. And so,
I think you're jumping again. I think what Mark is looking at, and I think that the same question I'm going to ask is,
can we get our
looking
money
at the
back?
new funding program.
Yeah, no, we can't get ours back.
So as far as I understand,
You're asking me?
the city portion of the service lateral is replaced by the city at city cost, no two ways about it.
That's
The
correct.
entire rate.
The utility costs.
Under any
Yeah.
program we do, the city pays for our portion from the property line to the water main.
I misunderstood. You are
And
correct.
the second that a private landowner replaces their portion, the city is compelled to replace their portion.
Right.
So it's,
So the city portion of the lateral is replaced by the city at city cost, at water utility customer cost.
That was the $400,000.
Yes, right.
No debate.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, I misunderstood what you're saying, but you are correct. And so that $400,000 is going into the rates?
Yes.
Yes, right. Is that what you're asking me?
Well, I was just
Well,
trying
it
to clarify
has
what
to.
you were saying.
I'm sorry.
It has to
Yep,
come from
that's right.
somewhere, so,
So it is being passed along?
yeah.
Yes, okay. Now, I'm sorry, I was on a roll there, so I had my speech in my head, but, so now we come to how do we fund or help homeowners fund their portion of the replacement?
Right.
And that is where we get into then the fact that what is the DNR going to make us do? And again, as Dan said, if the homeowner replaces their portion, we have to replace our portion, so our costs continue to go up. But to get the PSC, or the ability to place some grant money in our rates through the Public Service Commission, we have to pass an ordinance that says that anybody that's got a lead service lateral has to replace it. And so we get into this revolving
wait.
cost thing. Go ahead.
Now, I just want, that's kind of a strong term that you said there. It's kind of like forcing people to do something.
It is.
So,
If we have the
over-
assistance program.
over,
Well,
yeah.
first an ordinance must be passed just to be eligible for the assistance program. They won't even talk to you if you don't have such an ordinance.
Right. So, but we don't have one, but still we're being pressured to get the homeowners to replace their side of the lead line.
Now you got it.
So
Yeah, this is where it gets really dicey.
either way, they're going to have to do it, right?
Well,
More than likely.
Yes.
We've been instructed that probably in the next couple of years, total lead removal will be required.
Right. Okay.
You'll be required to pass an ordinance that says you have to remove your lead line.
Uh-huh.
But currently, right now, it's when the city identifies that they have their own lead pipe in the street, it has to explain it to the property owner, we're going to replace our portion, yours is going to be affected by our replacement, which is going to increase your lead consumption possibly. So we're warning you, the best time to do it is while we're doing ours.
Right.
And we're also being required to
Mm-hmm.
identify all of ours, which then by, relationship, if we identify ours, we probably have identified theirs, which I see we have a very identifiable map right now.
so,
Yeah.
I have
go ahead. All right.
just a kind of a follow-on. On Mulberry Street and South Main Street, these were identified. Has every homeowner on those two streets chosen to take us up on this generous offer with this 50% payment by grant?
They
The
don't-
vast majority have,
Yes, but
I
not
mean,
every one of them.
but not every one of them, no.
So you-
And now, keep in mind, I mean, it's, your summation is right, but the problem is finding our side requires excavation. Finding the resident side, likely we can just go in and look at the meter, although we found there are some places where that's not the case. So even to find out if we've got lead is a cost. And so right now, the rule is that if the customer replaces theirs, we have to replace ours, but the customer does not have to replace theirs if we replace ours. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does and it doesn't.
Yeah,
But-
right,
but-
right.
But there's a risk. That's why
Very
I had
high
mine
risk.
done. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the second you have a new copper on an old lead, the corrosion goes way up. So we have to provide a picture.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the other part of that is that if we find lead on our side, we must replace that. So it's not like we can just throw the dirt back on it and move away.
I think that's what happened mine. They
Right.
knew that I had it, so they said, oh, we have it too. Now that we found it, because you asked us to come out here and check it out, we got to go ahead.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm laying this information out to you so that down the road, probably after the yard waste, we have another debate on do we want to do this? Because we are right now beginning a water rate case. And if we want to include some kind of a grant program, that's when we have to do it. And so you'll see there are caveats there that we have to follow, and there's a lot of paperwork. And right now, only 3 communities in the state have done this, a few more are exploring it, but because it is a little bit cumbersome, some are shying away from it, and it does open up an incredible cost. If we pass an ordinance that says that every homeowner that has a lead lateral has to replace theirs, that means that the city has to replace every time they find that. So that's another 300-plus laterals at a cost of about $5,000 apiece. So maybe I'm biasing it a little bit, but I just want to make sure that you understand what we're
No,
going to be debating.
you open a
down the
can
road.
of worms, it's gonna
Yeah.
raise rates for everybody.
Yeah.
And I brought it up before, and I was kind of made to be like a Grinch, but the people in Brookstone, they don't have that issue,
Right.
and their rates are gonna go up to pay for pretty much my neighborhood. Our homes are, they're the oldest homes in the city.
Now, I mean, you're talking safety, you know, you're talking.
Right. But in all the years I lived there, I never did have a doctor's diagnosis that had lead poisoning. I did it because I knew it's an issue, and someday I was going to sell my home. So pretty much half was health concern, the other half was I want to sell my house someday, and I want a clean slate. I know people.
You're gonna find that's what's gonna drive most
Right.
of the replacements now. So,
Insurance companies, too.
people, and I should take that back, I find that a lot of young people are very interested in making sure that their home doesn't have lead.
Yeah,
The older people tend to not give a.
right.
But the young people, but when you get to the people who are thinking about selling their homes, you know, I might sell my home in the next 5 to 10 years. They are very interested in having this program. They're the first ones that call and want to find out. if
Right.
it's available.
Well, I want to point out, though, lead lines isn't the only issues homeowners can run into. I remember asbestos, people had to clean that up on their own. We had a previous discussion about sump pumps. We did have people from Brookstone approach the city wanting aid to help with the constant sump pump running. I've had bat infestation in my attic. I had to spend $5,000 to get that cleaned up, and the lead lateral was only be 3,000? Yeah,
What a deal.
yeah, well, so, I mean, people are already handling safety issues in their homes without a aid program from city government.
The
So-
concern with this one, it may be the tip of the iceberg. I mean,
Yeah.
the movement, we think the EPA is gonna require that all lead laterals go. There's already, we've been warned by the DNR, there's already discussion that we might have to get involved with how to mitigate lead solder in the homes. Somehow we become responsible for that also.
Yeah, that's another issue. So there's more to it than the lead laterals. There's also the pipes within the house itself.
I'd like to just worry about the immediate one here right now.
Yeah, well, no, well,
Yeah,
it's,
I agree.
it's,
It becomes a real
Yeah.
concern, though, when we start looking at all this stuff. Go ahead.
So I've heard this must do all. Is there a time frame?
It's just talk right now. It's I don't know if you call it
How
gossip or
about the
whatever,
three?
but it's kind of the feedback we're getting from the
The
DNR.
utilities that have done these ordinances,
Yeah.
they pass an ordinance that says everybody must do this. Do those ordinances have a time frame?
Good question. I don't know. And it's so new, Mark, that we're getting good updates on this, but a good question. I don't know the
Because-
answer.
Madison has had you must replace the lead for a long time.
Long time.
And they give you a time frame, yes, within.
yeah.
Yeah, but Kenosha, Menasha, and Manitowoc are the ones that have the approved programs, and they all submitted different programs, and then Kaukauna is on the verge of submitting a program. But Kaukana's had the no lead in place for 2 years already. So I'm anticipating that we'll start to see more of that. They're doing it because the PSC is putting it in, but they're also doing it because the rumors coming out of the EPA. Every time we sit down and talk to the DNR, they're saying, I expect in 2 years that you'll see that all lead has to go. And I think that's being driven by the Michigan issue.
Oh, yeah.
And
all of it.
because of the high impact on children. So, because it does have a significantly larger impact on children and low-income people, and so they're looking at how to force those issues in the water utility. And it's not necessarily the cleanest, and that's been the problem, the Public Service Commission looking at the traditional concept of fee usage versus what the utility does on public versus non-public property, and then the public health issue that the EPA wants us to deal with. It's not been pretty. It's been been leaving municipalities scratching their head pretty hard.
I look at it as just one of many issues that have cropped up over the decades in making people safer. We used to pump lead out of all of our exhaust pipes in our cars. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah,
Because,
I think you're very well
you know, they say that there's really no safe level of lead exposure. So, to me, it's the right thing to do to address it. It's just a matter of
How to pay for
cost,
it, yeah.
you know, cost and timing.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Pay me now or pay me later. It's still gonna happen.
and it's clear that, you know, there's no two ways about it, as we just talked about, for the city portion, the city water utility ratepayers pay. And then, you know, it's just amazing that some people get granted 50% and still don't want to do it, but some people will do it. I'm sure some people in the last couple of years have done this with no grant money as well.
You are correct, yes.
So some people you have to drag kicking and screaming to make their lives better, and other people volunteer to do it. That's just the way people are. There's all types. So the debate is, what do you do for those people? Do you know, we could have an ordinance that says you pay all the cost for your portion, right?
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting, once we submit our final report on how many LSLs we found, then the DNR will determine how many do we have to replace per year. And that may be our driver right there. That may tell us, do we need an ordinance, or is the DNR already said, you got to replace them, you got to find them and replace them?
But
What
that's
hap-
only our side at this point.
And there's other
No,
ways
that's
of-
the customer side.
There's other ways of funding it. It's not just taking advantage of the grant program. Weren't we also talking about doing a special charge, and then the property owner has to pay back over time?
That's,
Both of these incorporate that.
yeah, that's part of the PSC setup, that you can only, according to the PSC rules right now, very quickly, is you can only grant up to 50%. You can loan or assist up to 100%. So you could do a low-interest loan or something like that, but
But what about a special charge, which is like a special assessment? That's
They
not,
allow that too.
okay.
if I understand what you're saying, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
akin to a loan. I mean, it attaches to your real estate, you pay
Yeah.
it over time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, right, like a sidewalk.
Because
thing
for
or
the
something.
property owner, paying back a special assessment at least gives them the advantage of being able to take it off their taxes. We're just paying back a loan doesn't.
It's the same
Right.
thing pretty much, but the one, the write-off is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Assessment, yeah.
So when we get to the point in our rate case, if we decide we want to do this, we have to have a plan. We have to identify, how are we going to do this? How much are we going to grant? How much are we going to loan, et cetera, et
And we're
cetera.
not going to decide that tonight.
Correct.
We're just throwing things
I
out,
want you to be aware that it's coming.
yeah. Any more things to throw at staff?
Oh,
Let's
and just
hope
wait,
future discussion and disagreement will be civil.
crisis du jour.
It's quite the entangled, you know, you got the PSC coming at you at one direction to do this, you got people, residents that want to do whatever from one extreme to the other, and of course,
That doesn't even mention the EPA or the DNR, who
Right.
really hold the cards.
right.
Hmm.
And you
When
don't,
they show up at the DOJ at a meeting, you're pretty sure they're serious.
I had a resident call me this week, and I explained all this to her, and I got all done, and she said, you know, I really don't understand what you said, but I don't think it's good, is it?
Okay.
Maybe later.
you know, let's see, it's 380 people have been notified that they have lead service laterals, correct?
That's correct.
And we don't have, there's no grant system beyond what we've already,
That's correct also.
so of those 380 people, some of them have said, I didn't know that, I want this, I'm going to get this fixed right away. I imagine some have done that, correct?
Maybe one or two, quite honestly, Mark.
Not that many,
No.
wow.
And I can tell you the exact conversation is, I just learned that I've got lead, is there funding available? No, there isn't. And then it's either, okay, or can you put me on a waiting list? And that's about the best we can do, explain to them there may be funding down the road, but they're not. Again, one or two have said, I don't care, I'm going to replace it.
I forgot I was on the list, and I went and did it. I got this thing from the city. I thought they're going to sue me for something, or the summons. What a nice surprise that was, getting a check from the city. All right. We'll move on then to item 10, update on the radium test. We were gonna.
Good.
Oh, you got something else for item 9?
I thought we had a positive one coming up, but I guess not.
Oh,
No.
It is positive
It is,
in the
yeah.
final result.
I think,
Yeah.
I think we kind of talked about this a little bit last year when we really initiated it, and so this is an update and maybe even a solution as to what's going on there. Well 4 is the only well that we found levels of radium that exceed the maximum. Now that, we have levels of radium at every well, but they don't exceed the 5 picocuries per liter. I hope I'm saying that right. And so we went through this extensive testing, and it was what you call packer testing, where simply they pack part of the well so that you can only draw water from the area above that. And long story short, in doing that, we found that the bottom 120 feet of the well or so was where we were getting the highest concentrations of radium. And that was not surprising, given what kind of rock we had gotten into down there. So that, I think we talked a little bit about that. So since then, being in contact with the DNR again, we've submitted a plan to abandon the lower portion of the well. So that gets us to about 702 feet, give or take, that we will be using of the well. And in addition to the abandonment, we will be doing a regular sanitation, which really basically it's like shocking your swimming pool or something, only really intensely. Not just with chlorine, but with an acid product. Just quick, they showed us, they took a video of the bottom part of the well, and there's a lot of growth in the bottom part of a well. And so we got rid of that, and we will continue to do that now in well 4. And so that really is a fairly inexpensive fix. I think, as it says in this memo, the fix itself is about 20%. We've spent probably about 30%. Does that mean hurry up? No problem.
Someone's coming to get his car.
Oh, I thought that meant your car is running, get out of here. Anyway, I can do that. So we'll probably, all in, will be probably $50,000 to $75,000 on investigating and mitigating the issue in well 4 at this point. The last little bit of the memo is kind of another heads up that we anticipate either the threshold will be lowered to, the danger threshold will be lowered, and so some of our other wells may become suspect, or this well will once again get high radium levels, or any other well may get high radium levels. And at that point, we will probably have to be looking at some different mitigation techniques. And those are outlined in the memo. They're expensive. So, no matter what we do, they may be expensive. So, again, just another heads up, we maybe bought about 10 years here before something else may happen, but we'll take it. In the meantime, we're going to monitor like crazy, make sure we know what our levels are, and we are going to do the steps we have to do to, sanitize and keep any kind of bacteria and sort of thing out of the bottom part of the well. So that's really the radium update.
If we abandon that last 120 feet, do we still have enough capacity within the system?
Yes, thank you very much. That's part of the Packer test, too, to make sure that we still have capacity, and we do. In fact, overall in our system, we've got capacity with the 3 wells, so we're in good shape.
Okay.
Where's well 4 located?
Yeah, and no, that's well 6. Well 4 is the one off of Birch Street.
Right. Kind of just south of Tyranina.
Yes,
Yeah.
across from the Rock Lake Church.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry. That's 5.
Yeah.
4 is the one across from the park
Franklin.
by
Right.
Ryan's Auto Care there. I'm
Right,
sorry.
the one
that's
with the,
four.
with the large ground tank.
You got it.
Okay.
Boy.
Mental gymnastics.
Oh, man. And the water tower is empty right now, but who cares?
Any other questions on radium?
So the memo here said that it was like 20,000 to do it, or 30,000 to do it with 20,000 of engineering or vice versa. What about?
The other 25 or so is the actual testing that we did, the placing of the Packers and all of the water testing we had to do.
What was the cost to get to this point?
50.
Yeah,
So in addition to the 50 you mentioned in the memo,
we're probably total all in somewhere between 75 and 100.
I think though that the engineering and the pre-testing was about 50, and then what we're doing now is about 20.
okay.
So I think 70 is in the right category.
But setting the Packer tests and then multiple water tests, that added up pretty quickly.
That's all I had.
The ultimate point is we're well below the 300 plus that we had thought we were going to get nicked on. But still.
Good
costly.
news, good news.
Yeah, good news.
A mere $50,000 or so.
I'll take it.
All right, move on. All right, 11, update on South Main Street. Looks good to me.
And I was serious, it is good.
We're actually making very good progress, ahead of schedule. So far ahead of schedule that coordination with the school district became more difficult than we originally anticipated in their construction project. We spend a lot of time every Tuesday talking about how to make everything work and what the problems are. But today you'll note that they have all the water and sewer and stormwater and base done on phase 2, which is from Veterans to East Lake Park Place. They poured the northbound lane today. So there's concrete laying on that street now. So if you're on the east side, you're probably not getting into your house for a couple days, so you need to figure out how to get around. I did walk over the top of the concrete today, so I'm assuming that by the end of the day, they'll have some ramps and places where you can get over it. On the far south end, not the north end. It's probably a little soft on the north end yet. So that's gone really well. What they're looking at is and this changes day to day, so be careful. But they are looking at pouring the southbound lane Monday. And then coming back and doing the curb and the sidewalk on the east side and doing the curb and the sidewalk on the west side. In phase 2. They are talking about having the street open from Madison to Veterans Saturday. Technically, we're gonna have a grand opening or
Ribbon cutting.
ribbon cutting on Friday morning. And it might be open Friday, but they wouldn't absolutely 100% guaranteed it. They guaranteed it would be ready Saturday. So the detour route will change. Because remember, when that part opens, the traffic now comes down to Lake and splits. So if you're headed south, you'll come down to Lake, take a right, go down to Ferry at Lake, and then head south, rather than going up to College. And you will be required to go all the way south to Woodland Beach Road and then come back in. Because Ferry is closed right now, or East Lake Park Place is closed right now, and both ends of Main Street at that intersection are closed. So you can't go north and you can't go south. So that part is all closed. Most of the traffic now is being routed up Pinnacle. So we'll come Pinnacle to East Lake Park Place, slide over, grab Gold, and come over to Lake. And then Lake will come all the way down to Main Street. You can turn right, although if you're a local, you're still gonna use Madison. But those will be the changes, so there are gonna be some local access route changes and some signage changes. East Lake Park Place will be, or Lake Park Place at Main Street will be open again Monday or Tuesday. Gravelled, it will be open by the end of the week, concrete probably. I shouldn't say the end of the week, maybe the beginning of the next week.
And that's just a drive across, right?
It's just to drive across, you won't be able to turn north or south. And I shouldn't say that, they are probably gonna open that southbound lane to local traffic, but it will not be open to full traffic. But south, you're gonna be blocked, there's no way to go. From East Lake Park, from Lake Park Place to Woodland Beach Road will be closed. If you wanna get to the front of the high school, come down Milton, they'll have the gravel across, then you can travel across. You can access from East Lake Park Place into the parking lot in the back. That's still available. There's a lot of construction traffic going on. So, as I understand, there are between 500 and 800 trucks for the athletic field at the high school alone, loaded trucks.
And those go north from the city, or is it?
From the
Yeah.
south,
Oh, okay,
from the south.
yeah. You know,
Pinnacle to East Lake Park.
that's a
Place.
that's a lot of truck traffic on residential type roads. It's gonna put wear and
We've
tear on
had
them.
substantial number of meetings in the last week negotiating who's paying for what.
Huh.
So, yes, there's been a lot of conversation about, the streets are damaged, how we, because the contractor may use them too, A1, so we have a shared haul road between two contractors. And then, obviously, the roads aren't brand new, so the city has to assume some level of cost of that rebuild. And then it works through the state standard process, so in the contract and as, in the SMA, which is a state municipal agreement, it spells out that they are gonna order the contractor to repair the road. The state or the city is responsible for their share, and they will pay that additional to the state. And then through an MOU, we're just signing a portion of our share to the school district because of their wear and tear based on the construction project. So, those are things that we've had to handle in the last week. That's taken quite a bit of time. Dan's writing agreements. So,
Busy.
the streetlights, we learned today how flooded Nebraska was, because that's where they make the streetlights. And why we're not getting them until July 10th. And they are doing their best to put together a proposal that explains to DOT why they shouldn't be fined $5,000 a day for every day after June 17th, or when they go in. DOT, as of yet, hasn't agreed to not fine them, so that could be a loser, the streetlights for them. Other than that, I think there's some minor things in the downtown area, there'll be chimney seals and sanitary sewers. They'll go through and make sure you can get on all the water valves and all the typical final inspection stuff. And then Friday, that north portion should be going. I anticipate they'll be, early July, they'll be to Woodland Beach Road. If you remember correctly, they weren't supposed to be there until October.
So is it gonna turn into a one-year project instead of a two-year project?
Let's put it this way. The contractors say yes, the state says no. So I think the state says no just because things can change so fast, they don't want to build expectations. But the contractors are like, oh man, I'm going to be able to take in another project this year and make some more money. So it's a little bit different in those two perspectives, but from the standpoint of, has it gone extremely well, considered all things? Yes, very well. Probably the one item that we've debated the most is backfill. most normal construction projects have about 20% backfill, which we did. That hill looked like great sand, but there's been a lot of areas where it's been kind of mixed. So
You're not talking about the road base here, you're talking about the sides? I don't understand
I'm
it.
talking about material to fill back in over the water and sewer lines,
Okay, which is actually in the,
trenches.
in the tree lawn, right?
Yes. The water was in the tree lawn, under the sidewalk on the east side. The sanitary sewer runs right down the middle.
Okay,
And the sanitary sewer is the one that's really eating it up, because it's such a deep trench, it's
okay.
getting wider and wider
Yeah,
and wider. So they have eaten a lot of backfill up, substantially more than what was originally anticipated. So that's why we tabled our financing package at the council meeting Tuesday night, and had to go back to the drawing board and put together new numbers.
Because that's all sewer,
Yes, that's all sewer. Not all of it, some of it went to water, but not nearly as much as what went to sewer.
well, not going to water is a good thing.
We debated using more of the natural material in the water trench, but that water trench is in the back slope of the curb line trench or support. So if you didn't get a perfectly compacted material in the bottom, that curb would tend to settle off. And we just decided, no, let's just keep using the backfill and not worry about the other material. We'll just continue on and make sure that we don't have those types of issues in the future. Better safe than sorry. So, but that's probably, we have had a couple other change orders, but pretty minimal, things that you would anticipate, like finding storm sewers that had to be backfilled, and unusual water connections, and sewer connections.
Water going through sewer?
Most of that we had anticipated. There were a couple houses that tied together rather than coming straight out to the sewer and water. So you had one house, and then the house next to them just connected to theirs.
Shared laterals?
Yes, and so it made it a little bit more difficult to make the connections. We had one that was a 2-inch line that ran into Blue Moon, that was all lead. So that they had to come in on a rain day and work under unusually difficult conditions at the time of material to make those repairs. So we've had some that we've negotiated with property owners where we put in special features for their property and they'll reimburse us. Otherwise, the backfill's been the most substantial. Any questions?
How the out-of-towners doing? I saw Badger Bush one day trying to get through. He ended up doing a U-turn down on Madison in front of the CV Hair Company. I think he's trying to get to Fort. So he said, dude, you can't go, you gotta go way outside of town.
The bypass is 26.
I know.
They absolutely should have known that.
The
Yeah.
detour route is 94 to 26 to 18.
Yeah, it says on the interstate, yeah,
The local access route is for accessing local properties.
yeah.
And businesses. It's not made for semi-trucks to drive through the city.
Mhm.
It's not marked like a detour route. I had some people complain to me. There weren't any orange signs designating the detour route through the city. Well, there isn't one. And we split it half and half to try and reduce the amount of, we didn't send all the traffic to one route. We split
Right.
it in half, trying to reduce it, particularly because ferries are usually narrow in some of those areas. We tried to, split up the traffic flows, so. It made it a little bit more difficult because people had a hard time figuring out that the south detour route was different than the north detour route. It just, there was, if you saw the maps, you could go either way, it didn't really matter. But as long as you had a map or you could find something that gave you, if you figured out how to follow the signage, it wasn't too bad, but there were people that had a difficult time. The first, 2 weeks, we had a lot of semis who were getting jammed up into that Ferry Street intersection up there. And a lot of them were coming through the city here. We had one guy who missed his turn on Jefferson. He was actually in the right spot, but he missed his turn and went up Grove. And then he got pulled over and he said, well, I'm supposed to be here. And he said, well, that was on your route, but you just made the wrong turn at the wrong point. He says, you know, I got onto the route, and he said, I just kept following the signs. So, but those are the, you know, everybody's gonna be a little bit confused. It's a tough year. Yesterday, I was on South Main Street, and the number of cars that actually drove all the way down to the far south end to where they had all their equipment stacked, and you couldn't get out, to turn around and drive all the way back to the north end. Was pretty substantial.
Overall, I think it's going pretty darn good, pretty darn well.
Yeah, there are a couple things I think that we didn't plan for as well as we could have, but some things. Let's put it this way, the state is gonna use our model in the future.
That says something.
Yeah. You know, they really like the way we put our stuff together to be able to handle this. And so they are putting it together as a model to recommend in future projects. Obviously, we really heavily concentrated on the downtown area, and just figured the south end would kind of fall into place. It did not. They're two totally different creatures. So that was a little bit of a learning curve for us. You know, there's some insurance claims I'm sure we'll see bannered around, some matching problems here and there. I know that the grade of the street has to meet ADA requirements, and so it doesn't meet exactly some of the old ones. So where it used to match up at the property line, doesn't have the same slope, so some of the sidewalks got sloped to the middle, and then they run down to a driveway and back out, and the property owners are like, well, that's dumb. So we started to say, yeah, it is dumb, but how else are you gonna design it? And you know, Jeremy's White, who is the designer, did the best he could. There's some areas where he just matching up perfectly just didn't work. You just can't do it. New design standards in old buildings sometimes just don't go together.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to number 12, update on Mulberry Street.
It's going just as well as South Main, right?
I wouldn't say that. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mulberry has had one of those big well point setups almost from the beginning. And if you watch that thing pumps water 24/7. And those little tubes that are about every foot and a half run full of water 24/7. So I know a lot of the homeowners are going to be upset to see that go because their sump pumps have stopped running. That being said, though, there's a lot of water in the base. There is a lot of mud in the base. That's not necessarily in there. Like when we got up on this hill, it was nice sandy, clayey material. There, it's not. It's nasty. Kind of more like the downtown was. And even the downtown was better because it had been dug in so many times. There was material in it. And downtown had stormwater drainage since 1907. Mulberry still doesn't have stormwater drainage. It will after this project, but right now it's a problem. They've basically been working on water and sewer. They have some of the stormwater done, so from Hope Street up to Mulberry, and then some in that intersection they've done. The water and sewer from Louis Street north is done, and some of it from Louis Street south is done, and they are going to start next week. They're going to start south of, well, no, this week they started down Fargo to the southeast to Browns Court. And then next week they will start south from Fargo, headed towards Washington. And then at some point, around July 1st, they're planning on opening Madison Street. water and sewer connections.
Opening Madison Street?
The sanitary sewer that from Madison Street,
When you say opening or closing Madison? Street?
they're gonna close Madison Street.
He meant open it up,
Yeah,
excavate it.
yeah, okay,
Excavate it. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna close the street to traffic, but they're gonna open it up for excavation,
right.
for sanitary sewer and water, because they have to connect into that intersection. Now, they're running the water south from Louise, and they can run almost all the way down to Madison Street, and just leave it set until they can get into the intersection. They can't, the sewer has to start at Madison Street and run north to Fargo. So that's a little bit different, so that's why we set the project up, phase one started at Fargo and ran north, because the sanitary sewer in that area turns and runs down Fargo Street. So anything that runs to the northeast from Fargo doesn't go to Madison Street. So they could start at that point and, and that was, one of the key points is to make sure that we didn't have Madison closed when Main Street in the downtown area was closed, and we didn't have Madison Street closed during town country days. So those are things that we had to work around, so that's why it phased the way it did. If I were to say, I'd say they're 2 weeks behind. Headed to 3.
So the Madison Street closure will be in July, mid-July or something?
I would say probably closer to mid-July, but right now they're talking July 1st. I would say that. They've started working Saturdays, so they may start to get closer.
Any other questions? And I noticed the Facebook pages have weekly updates. Dave's been putting them on. All right, 13, recommendations for future agendas. I know we've got the
Yard waste and food.
yard waste. I don't have anything. Ian? Vicki? Okay, then we're going to 14, adjournment. I'd like to adjourn this meeting.